to Bookworthy. Today, we're talking with author and host of the 5-Minute Parenting Podcast, Sandra K Chambers. We are talking about her book, Maisie Discovers Her Fingerprints. Maisie is short, pudgy, and boring, hoping to find something unique about herself. So Maisie visits her friends at the zoo to see what makes Maisie special. I can't wait to hear more about Maisie and Sandra and her books. Welcome to Bookworthy, Sandra.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. I know we've kind of had some hits and misses, and we've been trying to get you on here for a while, so I'm glad to have you.
Thank you for your patience.
Well, life still happens. Well, before we get into talking about Maisie and your books, our question of the week is, what is your favorite thing about spring?
Well, I love the warm weather. I don't like the allergies and the pollen, but I love flowers. And so just seeing everything spring back to life, it's amazing. You think about how God does that. It's just, they just come up, they grow. I mean, hopefully I planted them first, but just the beauty of spring, I think.
I agree. It's kind of that rejuvenation, that hope that, okay, we rested for a while and the world is alive again.
Yes.
Very neat. Well, Sandra, tell us a little bit about Maisie and discovering her fingerprints.
Well, the secret behind Maisie actually is that Maisie is my real grandpuppy. So my daughter and son-in-law have a Frenchie, and she's adorable. And so I'll go back and tell kind of a little bit about the fingerprint theme that's carried through, because I did fingerprint theme in my devotions, fingerprint devotions. That launched last November, 2023. And it was just during COVID, it was like, I started researching fingerprint facts just for fun. And then I started recording the research and sources, not intending to do anything with it. It was just, I went down this rabbit hole. I just loved it. So I just kind of felt a nudge from God, keep recording these things. And then when he said, do a devotional for kids, it's like, what? I don't write for kids. I was a teacher, but I just hadn't written for kids. So I kept praying about it, and I started putting together, it's just amazing how the fingerprint facts about God and creation, they just fit with a lot of truth about God. So I started putting this together, had 40 devotions. I think I started querying before the 40 devotions, and I did get a publisher. So it took a year and a half, almost 2 years to publish, but that was my theme. And so that kind of carried over to Maisie Discovers Her Fingerprint. So I carried over the theme because kids need to know that they're special, that they have unique fingerprints, unique qualities about them. And so Maisie, I just wrote as a fun picture book for my family because there's a real Maisie. And so when I read it to them, they just said, "Oh, that's such a great story, Mom. And you just got to publish that." And I just didn't know if it was that good or not, but I sent it to my old publisher and they said yes. So Maisie came to be.
I love that. Now, Maisie goes to the zoo, which usually has some very unique creatures. What does she kind of learn along the way?
Well, she knows that humans have fingerprints unique, and she doesn't feel special. Just like you said, she's short, pudgy. Her doggy friends don't accept her. They don't invite her to sleepovers because she snores and she can't swim with them. So she's feeling left out. And I think kids will also relate to that maybe. So she goes to the zoo to ask her animal friends if they have unique fingerprints. And they tell her, the ones she talks to tell her, yes, we have fingerprints just like humans do. And then she asks them, do I have fingerprints? And they all say, no. You're just a dog. You just have paws. And so she's really sad. But the book kind of does take you on a scientific journey because I learned about which animals have fingerprints that are unique like humans. And then she also learns about certain animals like tigers and leopards who have unique spots and stripes. And so kids will learn a lot about the animals as she goes. And then, she leaves sad because they all tell her she doesn't have fingerprints. But I'm not going to give it away. But Maisie does discover that she has a unique fingerprint. It's just not on her paws.
Very sweet. I love that. It's kind of one of those overarching messages that not just kids, but I need to hear from time to time too. You know, just to remind ourselves that we are special and unique and made with purpose. And even when everybody's saying one thing, God is saying something different usually. And I think kids, especially nowadays, really need that message because we get kind of, I don't know, my kids want to compare themselves to them and their classmates. And it just becomes this cycle of, let's remember how God made you. If he wanted everybody to be the same, we'd all be robots and it would be boring. And it's our differences that make us unique. And
the culture doesn't help by telling kids, they don't tell them the truth. So, it's really important that we build a biblical worldview for our kids because the culture doesn't.
It's very true. And not just look at, Maisie's physical features, like, she doesn't have fingerprints or she doesn't have, stripes like the tiger or certain qualities that make her unique, but it's something special about her.
Yes.
And how God made her and who she influences that makes her special. And I think this world does a good job of wanting us to focus on how we look and how we compare to everybody else. But there's so much more to us than just how we look. And I love that Maisie kind of goes on that discovery, and animals have a way of communicating that better than humans do sometimes.
They do. They're so lovable.
They're too fun.
Yes.
Well, what about Maisie made you want to have her as the main character?
Like I said, I grew up and had some dogs, but they were outside dogs, so that there wasn't that bonding. And when our daughter she said, I'm getting a French bulldog. And, my knowledge of bulldogs was like great, big, scary bulldogs. And when she brought Maisie home, this little thing that you could hold in your hands, she was adorable. And she just captured our hearts. She really did. So, like I said, it was just kind of a fun experiment with the picture book that I didn't think was going to go anywhere. And it surprised me. It surprised them. And I'm just really excited that it actually is here. And I love the artwork. I was really fortunate to have my input with the illustrator. And so I sent her lots of pictures of the real Maisie, and she made the Maisie in the book look just like the real Maisie.
Oh, sweet. Now, what's one of the most unique fingerprint facts that you kind of discovered in this little deep dive?
Well, besides the one about Maisie and dogs, which I won't reveal here, I think that, of course, I go into, how fingerprints are used and how they developed, but I also talk about other things like, fingerprints. You leave a fingerprint because of the oils and sweats on your fingers. And so it was so much fun because I compared that to how we leave, we influence and we leave our fingerprint in life. And so kids need to know that they're important and that what they're doing, what they're saying, because of those fingerprints, they can affect people.
It's very true and very sweet to just kind of compare that to our fingerprints, because I think kids are very good at putting their fingerprints all over the place.
Well,
physically, at least on my coffee table for sure. And so it's neat to make that comparison to how we affect the people in our world as well. I think that's such a sweet concept for kids to get at a young age in a picture book, just to kind of think about. It's not all about me, because that me lens that kids have is hard to break through. And the sooner we help them understand how they influence one another,
right,
better they understand the world that they're in. And I love that. Now, Sandra, what do you hope kids walk away from Maisie discovering her fingerprints with?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you've seen the front of the book, but it says, it's kind of like the kids can put their name in it, and it says, you are special, just like Maisie. And so I want them, at an early age, my fingerprint devotions are more for kids 8 to 12. Maisie is for kids 3 to 8. And we need to start so much earlier with our kids to show them about God and teach them about God. So, Maisie will help them. If they have these emotions of not feeling accepted, feeling different, I think that they will identify with Maisie. In fact, when I read the book and see the tear in her eyes, it's like, I get teared up every time too. And I think kids will really relate to the tear in Maisie's eyes because she doesn't think she's special. And so, I want kids to, and in the back of the book, there's 10 extra facts about fingerprints. And then there's a discussion question. So parents can talk to kids about, have you ever felt like Maisie? Have you ever felt left out and not special? So I want kids to, first of all, know that God created them and that he created them uniquely to be who they are. They may not be good in math. They may not look like somebody else, but like you said, they are unique and God has a purpose and a plan for them. I think so many kids don't think they have a purpose and a plan these days, even as they get into teenage years, and I think we need to build that in kids at the very beginning.
I agree. Kind of starting young and helping to build that worldview and put their identity in the truth of God's word rather than what this world will say about them, because that just gets so confusing as so many different cultures and so many different ideas get thrown at them, but having that firm foundation of you're a child of God made with purpose and you're loved for who you are is so important. Now, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm good. I didn't say.
Well, when did your writing journey begin, Sandra?
Well, I've been asked that question before. And when I think about it, I remember winning some kind of contest in elementary school for an essay. I have no idea what it was, but I just have that slight recommendation, that memory. And then I would say, I loved English and I majored in English in college. So I always loved to write. And I began doing some freelance writing when I got out of college. And I was a teacher, but I began some freelance writing. And then I wrote stories for Charisma, news stories, features. I just wrote about a lot of things happening in the DC area where I live. So Christian events there. And Charisma and Christian Life, I wrote for them for many years. And then I started doing travel writing, which I really enjoyed too. But, and it wasn't until 10 years ago that I wrote my devotional my book on prayer. So I just thought, if I write more books, it'll be for adults on prayer. But, I've just done a lot of different types of writing. So it's been fun. It's really been a great journey.
It's really challenging to kind of put yourself in different positions.
Yes.
I love writing for children, but then I also do some freelance writing in the nonfiction space. I'm like, it just triggers a totally different part of my brain, and it's just fun.
Yeah.
Well, did you always want to be a author, Sandra, or is it just kind of what fell on your plate?
It's just kind of, I always loved journalism. So I really enjoyed that and travel writing. And then it was actually when I wrote my prayer book, Lord is Boring in My Prayer Closet. And that just came about because my pastor at church asked me to pull some things together for a Lent fast that our church was doing on prayer. So, I pulled some of the things together, and I don't know, I think the book was in my drawer for years. And finally, I just, I thought, what do I have to say to people? What do I have to say? And I had to get over that. I had to say, okay, God, if you want me to write that, I will write the book. And I did, and I self-published it. But, besides that, I didn't know where I was going from there. So I thought that maybe that's my one and only until COVID, when I just started with the children's stuff.
I love that. It's one of those 2020 and COVID is definitely a defining moment in a lot of lives, especially in mine too, in my writing journey. It just I think it was an amazing reset for us to focus on, what does matter? What is important?
Yes.
What does obedience to God look like in the crazy world we live in? And I'm thankful for that year, that season, because it did kind of reset my heart and my faith. And I know it did the same for a lot of people too.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, what is a book that's been the most impactful to you other than the Bible?
Well, actually, it's Richard Foster's book. It's just called Prayer, Finding Your Heart's Home. And it's just an amazing book on prayer. And you can read different chapters at different times. I mean, I've read the book several times, but, I just go back and read a chapter and it just, it encourages me. And when my prayer life gets dry, I can go read that again. So it's just a really good book.
Very neat. I like a lot of Foster's books on just kind of all the disciplines of Christianity. And it's always challenging to kind of rethink things.
He's really deep. So
it's just very deep.
Yeah.
You have to take his stuff in pieces, I think.
You do. That's why I like this book, because you can go any chapter, look at the title, and decide what you need that day.
Very fun. Well, what is one of your favorite books, Sandra?
As far as children's books?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, with my daughter growing up, my favorite books tend to go back to the time that I was reading to her. Like Dr. Seuss books and Goodnight Moon. I think they're still in the attic. So I'm going to be a grandmother in February. So I'm so excited. So I need to go dig those books out so she can have those. Where the Wild Things Are. I think that's just a fun book. The newest edition of that. And, I like Michelle Adams. In fact, she was kind of a mentor with her puppy dog devotions. And, there's just so many fun books out there by authors that I've come to know. So it's just great. But here's a funny little story. When my daughter was growing up, we had a Christmas book, and it was a scratch and sniff book. It's like, smell the tree, smell the cocoa, and there was a little square that you could scratch and sniff. And she loved that book. We wore out the smells. There were no smells left in the book. A few years ago, she was already an adult, out of college. I found that book online and I reordered it for her. And it was just, it was just fun to have that book again. And now she'll have it for her child. So that was just one of our favorites.
So sweet. I love how books come with memories. They say that sometimes food, a smell with certain food can trigger a memory, but I love how books do that too.
I think so too.
Okay, fun. Now, what can we expect next from you, Sandra?
Well, I've launched a book for the last 2 years around the holidays. I'm tired. So I have decided I'm taking probably from November through February, when my grandchild will be born. Basically, I'll still do marketing on my 2 books, some events, and maybe go into some Christian schools. But I'm just stepping back from really all the marketing. And of course, with marketing, you never have time to write anyway. So maybe I'll just do some fun writing. But I'm just kind of taking a step back. I do have a couple more picture books. One is basically finished and critiqued. But I don't know. I'm just praying about what God wants me to do. So I'm not sure at this point.
That's sometimes a hard but good place to be. And I'm sure when you're cuddling that little grandbaby, that God's going to show you what you want him to communicate to her. Yes. I love that we get to speak into our children and grandchildren.
Yes. It's so great. You can start praying for them even while they're in the womb.
Exactly. I'm praying for right now, just like the future wives of my sons.
Yes.
They're going to need some special women in their lives.
Yes.
Well, where can people find out more about you and your book, Sandra?
Well, I have an author website, which I think you'll put in the show notes, correct? And then I have the 5-Minute Parenting podcast. And I'm on a couple Instagrams, a couple Facebooks, LinkedIn, and I have a Pinterest account that has a lot to do with kids, activities, some of my posts, blogs on kids, and, more about my books and stuff.
Very neat. We will have all those links in the description so people can find you easily for sure. Thank you so much for being with me today, Sandra.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
It was fun to have you. And thank you for joining Sandra and me on this episode of the Bookworthy Podcast. Check the show notes for any books or links that we discussed and let us know in the comments what is your favorite thing about spring. Be sure to like and subscribe to discover more great books together. Happy reading!